Perfect. Sir, sir, we can see you and the presentation as well.
We'll be starting in a couple of minutes, Dr. Praveen Kumar Garu. This is Gopi here.
Okay, no problem.
Pramod?
Yeah. Shall we start?
Yeah, 7:30 sharp.
Yep. So we'll start with three Omkars. Om.
Om.
Sir, I'm ready. With pranams to the lotus feet of Bhagwan, I'd like to introduce Dr. Praveen Kumar, sir. Dr. Praveen Rapale Shiva Kumar Garu was born in 1967 in the Nalamala forest area.
Have we lost you, Pramod? Pramod?
Hello, Saram, can you hear me?
No, we've lost you totally.
Continuously muted for some reason.
You should start from the beginning. We've lost you right from the beginning.
Yeah. I'm getting muted. Okay, let me start again. Sairam, everybody. With pranams to the lotus feet of Bhagwan, I'd like to introduce Dr. Repale Shiva Praveen Kumar Garu, who was born in 1967 in the Nalamalla forest region of Amalapur village, Mahbubnagar, Telangana. His parents are Srimati Premamma and Sri B.R. Saravanna. Both served as government teachers. And Dr. Praveen Kumar Garu is an extremely disciplined life with and is a compulsive fitness freak, as defined. Dr. Praveen Garu is completed his primary and secondary education in Amlapur and Achampet government schools respectively. He pursued intermediate from Government College, Kurnool. He has obtained Bachelor of Variety Science from 1984 to 1990 and Masters of Veterinary Science from 1990 to 1992 from the erstwhile AP Agricultural University, Hyderabad. Dr. Praveen Kumar is an officer of prestigious Indian Police Service, IPS, batch of 1995. He was the District Superintendent of Police, Karimnagar and Anantapur, Andhra Pradesh from 2001 to 2005. War Crimes Investigator, United Nations Mission in Kosovo in 2005 to 2006. Deputy Commissioner of Police, Crime Detective Department, Hyderabad Police. Joint Commissioner of Police, Special Branch, Hyderabad City Police from 2010 to 2011. He is currently serving as a Secretary, Social Welfare and Tribal Welfare Residential Schools, Telangana and erstwhile Andhra Pradesh from 2012 to till date. During his career in the Indian Police Services, he has earned master's degree in public administration from prestigious Kennedy School of Government, Harvard University, USA in 2012. Dr. Praveen is one among the very few police officers from India who got selected as a fellow for prestigious Edward S. Mason program in Harvard University. Dr. Kumar was awarded the first ever Telangana State Excellence Award in 2017 by the government of Telangana in recognition for his selfless efforts in liberating thousands of marginalized children from all forms of poverty and eventually placing them in the orbit of higher education, eternal prosperity, and self-respect. In a career spanning 26 years of unblemished service, Dr. Praveen Kumar served in both international and national environments and showed commendable leadership and prudence in resolving conflicts, maintaining law and order, and in sensitive regions of Telangana and erstwhile Andhra Pradesh and former Yugoslavia. He was honored by both Government of India and Telangana for his exemplary police service. He received several awards, including Police Medal of Gallantry, President's Police Award, Police Medal for meritorious service, Internal Security Medal for the Ministry of Home Affairs, United Nations Police Medal for his outstanding contribution in peacemaking operations in post-war zones in Kosovo, Independence Day Medal by the President of India, World Education Forum Award, Joginder Singh Memorial Award for maintaining transparency in police department, and Dr. Ambedkar International Award in the year 2020 from Ambedkar Association of North America, USA. He has also got a commendation letter by the Director General of Police from outstanding work in counter-insurgency field, Civil Society Hall of Fame by civil society organizations in New Delhi, in recognition for selfless efforts in serving needy and deprived children, and bring a positive change in the lives of marginalized communities. Telugu Person of the Year 2015 by Sakshi Media House for having gone beyond the possible and inspiring millions to achieve their goals. And Gadicherla Hari Sarvotama Rao, BV Dasarathi Kirti Puraskaram 2017, Potti Sriramulu Telugu University, Hyderabad. He is widely known as the Superintendent Police of Karimnagar district and won the hearts and minds of people through friendly policing and mainstreaming of hundreds of armed insurgents in Karimnagar district, which is the cradle of Maoist revolution in the country. During his tenure, people from Karimnagar took oath under the infamous Huzarabad declaration that they would not allow armed insurgents to enter into their villages. He designed Stay in Our Village campaign to motivate the government employees to stay in the rural areas to serve the people better. The campaign came to be known as the Karimnagar model, which made a major positive impact on the government employees across the state. He made serious efforts to distribute the land of landless to landless families in Karimnagar district, but he wasn't fully satisfied with what he has been able to achieve in his life. And in a way, he felt some kind of void in life and became restless. He's fully aware of the plight of poor and felt the pain of these people. Dr. Kumar categorically says the weak continue to have weaker will as they are not aware of their true strength. What he hopes is a quantum leap from nowhere to everywhere. No matter what your background is, you must not kill your dreams. His insatiable desire to see light in the darkened lives of poor and less privileged made him look beyond the police service. He took over administration of social welfare residential education institutions in the year 2012. Dr. Kumar's central idea is that when a child laborer, Dr. Kumar's mother, would become a teacher and a mother of an IPS officer, a professor and a doctor, then who thought this story must resonate in every, then he thought that this story must resonate in every poor household in this community. Dr. Praveen often exhorts, if not us, then who? If not now, then when? As Secretary of Social and Tribal Welfare Education Institutes, he has been instrumental in transforming and impacting the lives of 200,000 poor children. And he strongly believes that the gap between the rich and the poor is the opportunity. He breathed new life into the moribund welfare residential institutions by introducing various path-breaking student and teacher empowerment programs and exposing poor students to a world of new opportunities, hitherto unheard of in the annals of the government education sector in India, and launching the India's first ever armed forces preparatory degree college for women, social welfare Sainik school, and school for fine arts for marginalized children. Today, under Dr. Kumar's leadership, sons and daughters of daily wage laborers, farmers, vegetable vendors, masons, rickshaw pullers, roadside tea sellers, peons, auto drivers are coming out with flying colors in various national level entrance examinations, IITs, NITs, medical colleges, Indian Maritime University, Delhi University and Azim Premji University and other top-notch universities in large numbers every year. Dr. Praveen Kumar is widely known as the brain behind the success story of the Everest conquerors, Malawat, Purna, and Anand. Malavat Purna, and a 13-year-old tribal student, created a spine-tingling history on 25th May 2014 by becoming the youngest girl in the world to scale Mount Everest. And Anand Kumar is the first boy who, from the most marginalized, to scale the Mount Everest. Purna went on to conquer 6 of the tallest peaks located in 6 continents in the world and become the first tribal woman in the world to conquer 6 tallest peaks across the world. We are very honored to have you here with us, sir. And with such an august, life story, I am sure most of us are going to be very, very inspired today. Thank you, and over to you, sir. Sairam.
Thank you very much, Pradeep, and thank you very much, everybody. And then I wish you happy Sairam to happy Sairam here, and then very good evening. So, friends, thank you for your kind and very generous introduction. I consider this as a huge honor um, to be invited to this prestigious forum. There are about 130 participants here, and then profile of participants is highly varied, and then you are part of a network which whose only objective is to serve people. I incidentally, which was not mentioned in the bio, is I was a superintendent of police Anantapur as well. So during that time, I had the great and rare opportunity of having darshan of Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba Garu, and I in the course of my duty there, and then in the course of a lot of other bandobas. So it was a very very holy place, and then where lots and lots of poorest of the poor devotees used to come, and then you know to with the hope that their problems and then get solved. So I really thank you for making me part of this August evening. Friends, I have been asked to share my journey, not necessarily as a police officer, but also as a secretary of social welfare residential schools. Whatever I am today in police, I owe a lot to our guru, Sri Hejje Duragaru, again, a very ardent and then very sincere devotee of Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba Garu. But for his nurturing, but for his guidance, I would not have been here. So not only me, but a lot of our colleagues who are in the rank of Additional Director General of Police. I am currently promoted as Additional Director of Police, and he right from day one, Sri Doragaru has guided us as the DGP, and then after retirement also he kept on guiding us. That is the spirit with which all the devotees of Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba help people and guide the humanity. I really thank you for all that. So, uh, so I joined the Indian Police Service in 1995. It was read in my bio. So today I'm not going to talk you about the policing, neither I'm going to talk about leadership. I will only narrate the course of events, narrate the course of events, and then narrate the reasons as to why I wanted to switch the career for a while to the welfare departments from policing. So, friends, whatever we do in policing, most of it is technical. In other words, you have authority structures, you have rules, and then you have guidelines, you have regulations, you have senior officers to guide you, to correct you, to help you solve the problems, and then you also have politicians to represent their problems, and then everything is well set. You all you need to have is a right kind of mindset, and then receptive mindset, and then a little bit of vision. So the system is very well defined. So most of it is technical. So the police department is, or any department for that matter, but more so police department, because it is a slightly regimented organization, it is designed to deliver. If somebody is not delivering in spite of the so many foolproof and then bulletproof processes, I think he or she is a misfit in the organization. So I I I don't take too much of credit for whatever I had done in police department. Of course, individual initiative is extremely important. The understanding the nuances of administration are extremely important, and it is it is not defined. It depends on, again, your personality. It depends on your upbringing, and it depends on your exposure to the world, and it depends on some of the characteristics that you imbibe because of your company. When I say company of the people in which you always move around. So, but otherwise it's generally technical. But when you depend heavily on technical authorities, when you depend heavily on processes, when you depend heavily on the measurable outcomes, what you lack, what you lose is the individual initiative. That's where the role of Sri Hejay Doragaru comes into picture. So while we have very well defined processes, but what he, as a great unconventional leader, what he ensured was all the youngsters. He identified those youngsters who had that innate initiative to do experiments. So that is how we started experimenting, and we started going to people, not necessarily believing the technical authority, not necessarily believing the guns, not necessarily believing the exchanges of fire, not necessarily believing the the raw power which police are endowed with. So we always wanted to experiment. We wanted to win the hearts and minds of people by doing a lot of social service. So in those days, we entered into the Andhra Pradesh cadre in very, very turbulent times. So no, there was no month where we did not have death of 5 to 6 constables in the state. That was a turbulent time. So much so that we lost a couple of one senior minister as well, and then one IPS officer. And then when we were there in the universities, we lost another IPS officer. That was a kind of turbulence in those days. But despite those shortcomings, what our leadership ensured that youngsters must experiment. So the first thing what we did was go beyond what is possible. If had I not gone beyond what is possible, probably I would not have been here where I am today. So otherwise, I would have been a very, very technically, very well defined police officer. So we went to the people with whom we were fighting. We went to the people, we went to their families whose children were underground. We went to the victims of the violence. We try to understand from their point of view, try to understand the problem, try to appreciate the problem in its entirety from everybody's point of view, not necessarily my point of view, not necessarily government's point of view. That requires a lot of freedom. So leadership is giving freedom to those people who want to experiment, because in every organization, as Pareto rightly said, 20% of the people make 80% of the change. But to be successful, you need to identify, you need to guide, you need to empower continuously those 20% of the workforce. And then I am very happy that my leadership had put me in that 20% of the category. It comes at a very huge personal cost. It comes at you severe inconvenience to your family, severe inconvenience to your parents, severe inconvenience to your children. Then your own personality will change, and then the people will not look at you normally. You cannot be socializing like everyone does. So all these things come at a cost. So, but the goal is to make India a secure place, and then Andhra Pradesh as a secure place, Telangana as a secure place, and then protect the lives and properties of people, and then rescue those people who are misguided by very weird ideologies. So all these things are extremely important for India to survive as a nation. So I think I have no regrets for whatever we have done on the field. But many of you might be having a doubt as to why, when he's speaking so high of his own career trajectory in police department after 17 years of service, why did he switch the career? Friends, it is not because I did not get very nice and cushy and very so-called powerful postings. No, no, certainly not. I volunteered to be in the social sector. I volunteered to be in social sector because I wanted to replicate the story of my own mother. My mother, again, I have told you in TED Talk, I have told you at many fora, but I still want to tell you again that she was a child laborer. Her parents were bonded laborers, and then they did not have any education whatsoever. But thanks to my grandfather's foresight, and thanks to the presence of two teachers, this is very important. Please remember this. Thanks to the presence of two teachers in those interior villages, the last colonies, right? So in those interior villages, the colleges which were colonies which were excluded for centuries. So in those villages, these two teachers go there, and then they see a young girl holding a sickle and going for agriculture work every day, and then they rescued her, and then they had admitted her in a government school. From there, she goes to a boarding school. From there, she becomes a teacher trainee candidate, and then from there, she becomes, she retires as headmistress. During that course, she also ensured that her four brothers also get educated and then enter the government employment. And she also ensured that her own children so join get good education. I don't say that my mother is totally responsible for my joining in a police service or my joining my sister's joining medical profession. Certainly may not be totally responsible, but she gave us a very solid foundation and the support. She and my mother and both father both, but particularly my mom. So they gave a solid social support. That's why I joined police service, and then my brother joined agriculture university as associate professor, and my sister has become MBBS doctor. So the point here, what I'm trying to tell you is, when my mother, a child laborer, could become an IPS mother of an IPS officer, could become headmistress, mother of an IPS officer. I think every child laborer, be it boy or girl, have right to become like my mother. They deserve the trajectory that my mother had experienced. So, but there were two teachers who changed the course of my mother. We have lakhs and lakhs of teachers in this country. Can't they change the destinies of these many girls and boys? Yes, they can, provided they go to the villages, they touch the reality. So, to understand that reality, then I went to my home in 2010. In 2010, I used to go to my home, but for various security reasons, various other reasons, I was not staying in our home for a longer time. So my mother ensured, she is 79, she is very active, she is in our village today. So she ensured that I stay in the home for about 5 to 6 hours, and then she showed me every home in our locality. And then either the huts are dilapidated, and then people are still working as agricultural laborers, people are still working as stone cutters, children are getting married at a very young age, and then young people are dying like old people at a very young age, because drunkenness, because of lack of awareness about health, so on and so forth, and joblessness and hopelessness everywhere. She asked me a very simple question: should I be proud that my son is an IPS officer, has a couple of guns with him, given by the country, thanks to the constitution, thanks to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, thanks to founding fathers of this nation, Mahatma Gandhi? Or should I feel ashamed that in spite of my son being an IPS officer, his neighbors are living in abject poverty? I had no answer. That was a wake up call. I'm telling you, I'm currently 53, but when my mother asked me this question, I was 44. That was a wake up call. I realized there is so much to do in this country, and I was living in a bubble. Of course, I was serving as a police officer. Of course, I was trying to protect the integrity, not territorial, but the internal security of this nation. I was trying to protect the lives and properties of the people who were at the risk of losing that. I was trying to bring the people who were, misguided by weird and then alien ideologies, which were not compatible to our culture. So I was doing all that, but am I doing enough? Certainly not. Am I doing enough? No, certainly not. I have borrowed a lot from this nation. I have borrowed a lot from this nation. I have borrowed this water. I have borrowed this air. I have borrowed the space. I have borrowed a lot of good values from my teachers. I've borrowed a good values from my mother, my father, my friends. So when should I repay? I have borrowed a lot of time of my friends in my village who are not fortunate enough to become like me. So what should I do? I have borrowed a lot from my, department, police department. They have invested heavily into my growth. But am I doing enough? I was absolutely dissatisfied. I came back. Then I decided to take a break from active policing, and then I decided to work very hard. It was the height of Telangana agitation, 2009. Then where I saw worst of the violence in Hyderabad. I expected in my life that I would see that kind of violence because Andhra Pradesh was generally a very peaceful state as far as public order is concerned. We didn't have too many movements, but Telangana agitation changed all the assumptions at one go. So then after that, so we saw people immolating themselves, dying, and then we had to carry a lot of dead bodies. We had to fire as many tear gas shells as possible. Some of us got injured because of stone pelting, and then all the Molotov cocktails that were thrown at us. So all that happened, we had to be witness to the burning, like a senseless burning of buses, public properties, private properties, so on and so forth. So during that turbulence, I still had the time to go back to my home, go back to coaching center, prepare for GRE, prepare for TOEFL, and then get the most respectable scores and then apply for foreign universities. I had applied for Princeton, I have applied for London School of Economics, and I had applied for Harvard, and was fortunate to get admission into uh, Harvard University and then London School of Economics. Right? So I think Pradeep, there is one difference. Can you mute everybody?
Sure, sir. That's what I'm trying to do. Yeah, please carry on.
No, to unmute myself here. Yeah, this is clear now. Thank you very much. Am I clear?
Yes, you are.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
thank
sir.
you. So that's what I did. So I went to foreign universities, and there I saw a different world. I went to Kennedy School of Government, where I happened to meet people of 80 countries. I went with my family. So then I studied there for 1 year. So I got master's degree there, and then I came back with that degree. But I went to my DG not to give me a police posting. This I think in retrospect, I think that was one of the best decisions I've ever made. Probably had I tried very harder, I negotiated with my DG, probably would have given me a range DG. I was a DIG then, a range Deputy Inspector General of Police. But I didn't ask them. I didn't ask him that. I asked him, sir, can you please spare me for welfare sector? I don't want to do policing anymore. I want to work as a welfare sector guy who can work in welfare sector, who can make millions of people like my mother, millions of people like me, because I studied in social welfare hostels. So I want to make millions of people like me. Give me an opportunity. He was confused. He said, anyway, okay, why are you going for a desk type job? And then where IAS officers themselves would not like to go, but why are you going there? So anyway, I said, I'm determined because I have learned some new things. And then the sense of guilt of not being able to do enough to the poorest of the poor people. So he's engulfing me from within. He's eating me from within. I'm not a normal guy now. So then he spared me, thanks to him. And then I then went to the chief minister, Mr. Kiran Kumar Reddy was there in those days. And then he also graciously accepted my request. And immediately he removed one IAS officer and then he replaced one IAS officer with me. So the second lesson I have learned is leadership. The leadership is all about being clear about what you have to do, listening to your heart, and talking to people, and then trying to clarify all the concerns that you have.
I think you muted yourself.
Hello.
Dr. Praveen Kumar Garu, I think.
No, we can hear Praveen, sir. Go by. We can hear Praveen, sir.
Hey, are you able to?
I think you need to check your audio settings if you're not able to hear clearly.
Chinmay Visa, are you able to hear, sir?
Yes, we can hear, sir.
Yes, it's loud and clear.
Right.
Is it audible, Praveen? Pramod?
Yes, sir. It's audible.
Oh, right. Thank you. Because,
Shall I continue?
Right,
Yes,
right,
sir.
sir.
Shall I continue?
Continue, please,
Yes,
sir.
sir, please.
Yes, thanks. So it's not about sitting idle or waiting for someone who can give you opportunities. No, you have to look for opportunities. You have to look for the opportunities that can address your inner conscience, that can address your inner felt needs, where you can go to the zone of self actualization, where you can find your calling, where which look for those opportunities which will tell you what is your ultimate purpose in life. What is the purpose? Like Friedrich Nietzsche said, if you know your why, you can bear anyhow. I repeat, if you know your why, why, if you know your why, that is purpose. If you can bear, if you can bear any how is suffering, challenge, torture, whatever it is. So the second thing what I did was I grabbed this opportunity because I wanted to do something desperately. So then I went there. The first day was a very turbulent day. The teachers, they didn't want a police officer to be there. I had even today I carry guns. The government has given my gunman AK-47, and then I have one pistol. So, but they didn't want a police officer to be there. So the first question they asked, first demand of theirs was, we don't want a police officer to be here because you will torture us in the name of discipline. You will torture us in the name of punctuality. You will torture us in the name of quality in education. Union leaders, I had to tell them, I had to reason it out to them, I had to negotiate with them, and then I told them, look, I am not here to work as a police officer, I am here to work as a student. I want to learn from you, I want to empower you, I want to bridge the gap between you and other constituencies. So that is what I did. So there were a lot of turbulent moments in the first 1 week. The people were not willing to accept me. Some IAS officers went to the CM and then they said, "No, how can you post, an IPS officer into the post of an IAS officer?" The chief minister, I knew, like current chief minister has a lot of clarity. That chief minister also had clarity. So he said, "I have made up my mind, so I am not going to change it." So that's how I did. I went. So I stayed there. The third thing what I did was, many of us we make a mistake of falling upon or banking upon the technical authority. That's why I started my briefing with the technical authority. Technical authority will not solve the problems. Even if it solves, it is a kind of a mediocre. It's like a status quoist. It is like a status quo. I don't believe in technical authority too much. What I believe is a technical plus informal authority. So I wanted to expand the sphere of my informal authority. How do I do that? So I requested my wife, I requested my children to spare me to bear with me for a while, and then I took their permission, and then I roamed around the entire country from Anantapur, from Hindupur to Srikakulam. That is the place called Bhamani and Orissa border. Then from Srikakulam, I went to Adilabad, again Maharashtra border. From Adilabad, I went to Karnataka border. From there, again Hindupur. So I roamed around 200 schools, all 23 districts of Andhra Pradesh. I roamed around, and then I used to sign files in cars. I used to sign files in the lounges of railway stations and the airports and whatnot. So very rarely I used to come to my office. Then where all did I go? I went to the schools. I shook my hand with the children. I ate with the children. I sat on the ground. Then I saw the toilets. Then I sat in the classrooms. I went to the parents' homes. I I stayed with the parents for a lot of times. Then I talked to them. I understood the concerns. What did I understand in this diagnostic study? First, the children do not know what they are supposed to do in the schools. Two, teachers have not seen the secretary in their life. Secretary is head of the department. Teachers do not know what is the vision of the organization. Certainly not. Three, there is so much of energy in the children, but nobody gave them an opportunity. Fourth, parents were conveniently ignored. Their role as stakeholders was conveniently ignored in the organization, wherein they are supposed to play a greater role. That was conveniently ignored. That's saddest part in the education system. Fifth, the classrooms were absolutely comatose. Absolutely comatose. Teacher thinks that he knows everything, he or she knows everything, and then children think that they know nothing. So that's why whatever teacher says is a gold standard, they have to consume it. So that's all. We came back. I was absolutely not comfortable. The disequilibrium in my mind was, going beyond the tolerable limits. I came back to the office. I called all the stakeholders. I identified that 20%. I identified that 20% of the organization which are extremely committed, which was looking for an opportunity. I called all those committed people, and we had brainstormed for days and weeks. Finally, we came up with a model. That model, we call it as a P5 model. So anyway, that's not the subject matter for the discussion here. So we call it as a P5 model, and then in that P5 model, we implemented. So what are the basic elements of P5 model? One is empower the teachers. Second is empower the students. This is something out of box. Empower the students simultaneously by using a multi-pronged strategy. Three, introduce a kind of healthy competitiveness, which was absolutely absent in a system. D, leverage technology. Use technology heavily, like what we are doing today. Use technology heavily. This I borrowed from police department in those days. Then fifth is reach out to the community. Without community, who are we? Community is the one which pays us the salaries through taxes. Community is the one which sends us the students. Community is the one which takes care of the students for 33% of the time. 33% of the time children sleep, and remaining 50% of the time they stay with the community. 53% they stay with the community, and just 14% of the time child stays in the school. Who is playing a larger role here? The community. So how can I ignore the community whose contribution is about 53% in the formation of a child as a man, as a woman? Certainly not. So I thought I should reach out to the community and then train the community, understand the community and train the community so that everyone speaks the same language. I started my speech with Sri Hejje Duragar. What did he do? He ensured that the right from DGP to a home guard, everybody speaks the same language. That is a brilliant masterstroke. You create a language and ensure that everybody speaks the same language. The vision, mission, strategy, tactics of an organization to achieve an objective which can transform the country, which can transform this nation, state. You have to create a language. So we try to create a language, and then we train the parents every day. Then the most important and out of box thing I have done, the leader should always be able to look beyond what is visible. Leader should be able to capture the imagination of his stakeholders. This is extremely important. What did I do? I discouraged the usage of word called Dalit, which means broken, because 75% of my students are formally untouchables, unfortunately. So then in tribal welfare, 75% of my students are tribes and Adivasis, poorest of the poor, again away from the so-called civilization. So we discourage the usage of words called Pichde, that is backward, then Badugu, then again backward, then untouchable, then again derogatory term, then Dalit, broken. So we didn't want our children to get impacted by those negative identities. That's why we designed a neutral but aspirational identity. SWERO. SW stands for social welfare. Now it is state welfare. And aero is synonymous with air and sky. So the idea behind this is you should be able to aspire, look at the sky. Your aspiration should always be towards sky. So the moment you get auto tabooed, the moment you get auto segregated, the moment you allow the self-pity, need for self-pity to consume you, engulf you, I think you cease to be a successful person. You cease to be a thinking person. That's why we change this Dalit or other identities into Swero identity. We wanted to do an experiment. So I'm not saying there are a lot of people ask me by just changing the name, will their fate will change? Will their fate change? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But you need to have an ideology, an operating system behind that identity. That's why we created 10 commandments. The 10 commandments are very simple. One is, I'm not inferior to anyone. Second is, I shall be the leader wherever I am. Third is, I shall do what I love and be different. Fourth is, I shall always think big and aim high. Fifth is, I shall be honest, hardworking, and punctual. Sixth is, I shall never blame others for my failures. Seventh is, I shall repay what I borrow. Eighth is, I shall neither beg nor cheat. Ninth is, I shall never fear the unknown. And tenth is, I shall never give up. I shall never give up. But You might as well ask me, mere giving the 10 commandments, mere giving the identity, mere doing identity re-engineering, will it solve the problem of all the poorest of the poor people in this country? Yes and no. Yes, because you need to have that confidence. You need to get exposed to a different ideology, because till recently, till yesterday, you have been only made as a recipient of sympathy. That will never tell you that you have potential within you. But no, because the mere recital of all these 10 commandments will not change your life. Then what should I do? I must prove that I live these commandments. I walk the talk. That's why we launched Mount Everest expedition. Then fortunately today we have launched the youngest ever female in this country, in this world. I repeat, youngest ever female in this world to have scaled Mount Everest is from our institution. 13 years, despite death and destruction. 18 people died in 5 minutes from Nepal side. The Sherpas refused to help. Still, these two children convinced, and then they again mustered all the courage and then placed their feet, tiny feet, on the peak of Mount Everest on 25th May 2014. What did I do by doing this? By doing this, I wanted to convey a message to all millions of poor people, particularly women in this country, that you are not inferior to anyone. I'm trying to prove my commandment. So I'm trying to prove the commandments. So today, we have expanded our organization. So in 2014, so when 2012 when I joined, so we had only we had about 5 to 6,000 vacancies because people had no faith in the system. But today, as we speak here in 2018-19, about 180,000 people, 180,000 people have applied for just 18,000 positions. I'm so proud to tell you that we are a government organization. It doesn't happen in government that easily. So much of union, so much of apathy, so much of indifference, so much of neglect, and so much of trust deficit between all the stakeholders. Even today, we have around 150,000 people waiting for admission into our institutions. How did we bring this turnaround? I'll go back to again the capturing the imagination. We captured imagination at every juncture. We tried to tell people that you have that power in you. Let me prove it to you. You trust me, I will prove it. Let us work together. Let us work together. Let us speak the same language. Let us go toward the same goal. Let us identify the goals. Let us own the goals, and let us do it together. And here comes the role of politics. Politics can accelerate the journey. Politics can accelerate this change. So had it been for any other politician, probably this much of acceleration would not have been there. When Telangana separated from Andhra Pradesh, we had just 295 residential schools. But today we have 1,000 plus residential schools, and each is being built at the cost of 20 crores each. Our Chief Minister, Sri K. Chandrasekhar Rao, has promised about 15,000 crores for this experiment. How did he get impressed? Again, vision. Again, determination to do something great, to do something out of box, to create centers of excellence so that all other members in the system can learn from these islands of excellence. So, and then increase the number of islands, increase their influence, increase their sphere of influence, so that everybody, it can be a very osmosis kind of process. A lot of ideas cross the membranes of impenetrable membranes, and then they crisscross from one system to another system. That is what has happened in Telangana. That is what is happening in Telangana today. Lastly, having worked so hard, so I just came here for just 2 years, from 2012 to 2014. And then when I requested our Honorable Chief Minister to send me back to my department, that is police department, he said, no, you have to be there till I say no. So this is my 9th year in social welfare and tribal welfare departments. We have over 2 lakh children who are doing phenomenally well. All our schools are English medium schools. All our schools are boarding schools. So we have 25,000 young women who have postponed their marriages to pursue their graduation. So again, we have residential colleges, and then we have every year we send about 60 to 70 doctors into medical colleges. We send about 500 people into NIT, 500 people to IITs and NITs. They get qualified. about 300 or 400 join in NITs and IITs, and we send them to ISERS, NISERS, and then Ajim Premji University, Bangalore, then Kriya University, then you have Delhi University, then we have students in University of London, we have students in Flame University, we have students in Indian Maritime University, we have students in Pondicherry Central University, which were just not heard of earlier. So I think this is what leadership is all about. Leadership is not just a title. Just because I have IPS or IAS, somebody has IAS or somebody is a minister, that's not leadership. That's a technical authority. It won't help you. Leadership is all about making the leaders. Leadership is all about transforming the lives. Leadership is all about acting, not talking. Acting on the ground with a clear objective, measurable objective. Leadership is all about empowering the teams, finding those 20% which can make 80% of the change. Leadership is all about leaving a legacy. So that is what leadership is all about. So otherwise, just if you bank on I am a CEO, I am CFO, that's why you should consider me as a leader. I think that is innocence. To be very generous, it is just innocence. No, that is not leadership. So that is what I wanted to say. So I will leave it at that, and I thank you very much for your patient hearing. So I will leave at that, and then if you have any questions or suggestions, I'll be extremely happy to take them, and then I'll be very happy to clarify if I am capable of doing that. Thank you very much once again. Sai Ram. Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, sir. So the stories that you've narrated, the instances that you've told, they're very, very inspiring. And I'm sure that all of our participants are thinking and reminiscing all the points that you've told us. And it's really, really awe-inspiring how you have changed the lives of children, women, girl children who have no prospects, and made them into such empowered, people in the country. So I think we will want to hear from the questions from the participants. So participants, if you have any queries, please unmute yourself and ask the questions. Yeah, Sanjay Kenny, brother, you have a question, I believe. Go ahead, ask, please.
Sai Ram, sir. This is Sanjay Kenny here from Bangalore. So I had a question, sir. You said that you talked about your moving away from the traditional police force to work for the socially backward and the oppressed. So that was kind of a leap of faith for you because your passion lay in the working for the poor and the oppressed. But everyone has that inclination or that call from within that what I'm doing.
Sairam, I'm not able to hear anybody. Is it only?
There is a disruption. You will have to ask the question again.
Midway. Sanjay got
Sairam?
Perfect,
Sairam, sir?
perfect. I think Sanjay, yeah, you're back, Sanjay. Go ahead.
Sairam.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so you said, sir, in your talk that you moved from the traditional policing force to work for the socially backward and the oppressed. So that was a leap of faith for you, where you followed your passion and follow your liking. But sometimes, at least in my case, sometimes what I do, I feel that my passion is something else. My strength lies in something else. But that leap of faith, the courage to take that leap of faith from what I'm doing to what I want to do, that becomes very difficult to take. So can you please guide how to gain that strength or courage to move from what I'm doing to what I like to do? What was that strength which you relied on to make that leap of faith? Sairam, sir.
Sanjay, thank you so much for asking this question. It is so relevant, not necessarily today, but not necessarily for you and I, but for everyone. How do you muster that courage to have that leap of faith? How do you take the first leap? I think you need to look around, and then you need to see the people. You need to have mentors. You need to see the people who are from same ecosystem. If you go to Malala Yousafzai and if you ask her what made you to fight the terrorists when you were so young, probably you will not get convinced. So because they're from a different ecosystem, the more diverse, the more varied are from the ecosystems, and their ability to convince us even through their stories will be less. So what we should look for is the people who are in our own ecosystem, who believe in the same values which we are, and then who are very close to us. Probably that is one starting point, I would say. Then second thing is, after all, the security is necessary. But what I'm trying to say is, I think when you take a quantum leap, I think you have to divide it into micro leaps. So you have to take shorter steps and then slowly, take it, and then again step by step, make two steps for 3 steps forward, and then take one step backward. So that is one thing. So, and then third thing is, you need to be surrounded by people, who can really, guide you. If that is not there, and then probably, it won't happen. So, and once you taste, first will be a gamble. Let me tell you very honestly, my first 1 week was a huge gamble. It was a make or break moment. So first 1 month, my senior officers would not allow me, because all of them are IAS officers. I am a police officer. So they always used to look at me as if I'm their enemy. So they never used to look at me in the meetings, and then they never used to process the files. So, and then and my ministers, they always used to look at me with suspicion, as if I have come here to do something nasty. So, and then the teachers always think that no, this police officer is carrying guns, and then he's coming into our classrooms, and then our classrooms get desecrated, etc., etc. The first week, first 1 month or 2 months was a huge gamble for me. Sometimes I used to get self doubt, and then why did I come here? Why did I come here? I would have been very happier as a police officer. So, but the desire to replicate my mother's story, the desire to pay back to the system which has been responsible for my growth. Um, so that was very dominant. I was very obsessed with that. That was a kind of passion. In Hindi, we call it as junoon, so the burning desire. So it was very powerful. So that made me to forget all those inconveniences. So, but I had all my antennae up. I was not sheepishly believing that everything would be a hunky dory or a rosy path. So I had my feedback systems very strong, and then I used to play a role of red team on myself. So I used to evaluate, am I really getting the satisfaction or not? So if not, what kind of course correction I need to make. So that kind of self evaluation and continuous evaluation has helped me. And once I tasted the success in the first month, then I had the clarity, and then after that I had much more, longer leaps that I had ever imagined. So that's how. And it doesn't come overnight, Sanjay. So you have to take the first leap, but it has to be a smaller leap. And then once you taste the success, then take a huge leap. Then again, once the concept is proven, then once you found the results, I think you don't have to have that self doubt anymore. After that, system will protect you, and the system will take you forward. You will get the enough wind beneath your wings, and then you will get that thrust. So don't worry about that. Thank you. But you need to have the clarity. What is that I'm going to achieve? If you don't have that clarity, probably I think that doubt continues to pull us back. Yeah. I hope I have answered your question. But
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir. We have another question from sister.
Yeah.
If my heart wants to have a career in one field, but I feel more responsible and see more purpose in another, how do I choose? It just look like my passion is somewhere else and I'm doing something else due to multiple reasons. So how should I get into that calling and how should I choose that?
I think start with art of giving. Start with philanthropy. Start with community service. Once you start enjoying, then make it as a kind of a full-time activity, so that you really feel happy and contented about what you are doing. So that's what I say. But start small and start it as a kind of partial community or community service at your convenience. And once you start enjoying it, once it gives you so much of happiness, then make it as full-time. Then nothing will happen. Don't worry. Nothing has happened to me, so nothing will happen to you also. So, and yeah, that's it. Yeah, nothing will happen. I'm the living example for that. And like me, there are millions of people who have listened to their hearts and minds. Yeah. But start
So
small.
we have
Yeah.
we have similar questions.
Please.
Like how to follow a calling when there are certain financial things, constraints, and multiple other constraints. So still we want to pursue for it. How should I go for that?
I think money is secondary. See, not everything is linked with money. So I think mind is the most powerful thing than money. So if you have that mind, money comes later. So I have seen many people. I keep seeing many people even today. Their heart is very strong. They don't look for money. So slowly, when you have that intention, when you start doing this in your smaller sphere, slowly it gains the idea or the activity gains traction. Suddenly, it becomes such a powerful magnet like Jupiter, pulls everybody inside. So I think money should not be a dampening factor of your spirit. Money has never been a dampening factor. Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba Ji. So his life itself is a great lesson. His life is a message to all of us. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, for example, he went to Colombia. Did he have money? No, but he had the burning desire to do something for the people from who were treated like the untouchables for centuries, who were denied the basic human rights, and then he went there. Did he go with any money? No. Then how did he go there? Maharaja of Baroda, he helped him. Okay, you seem to be having a very clear intention. I will give you. Then do this and then come back. He came back, and then today he gave us a constitution. He gave us. I'm just telling an example like that. There are many examples. So these things will continue to be there. But what is more important is the desire, the passion, and the purpose, ultimate purpose. That is very important. Once you are very clear, once you have strategy and tactics, money will come on its own. And not everything can be solved with money. There are millions of rich people millions of rich people, higher middle class, and then upper class people, high and mighty society. Are they able to do what they are supposed to do? Certainly not. No, they are squandering their life. They have lots of money. Are they able to do? No. But I met a lady called sister. I went to a place called Bihar, and then there I met uh, Varghese, Miss Varghese. So Sudha Varghese, yeah, Padmashri Sudha Varghese. She's running a school, two schools for Mushahari girls. Mushahari are the poorest of the poor people who eat rats and then survive. And then she, all the way from Kerala, she goes to Bihar, and then she starts a school. Is it? I asked the sister, Miss Varghese, where do you get money from? I don't need money. I just don't need money. I want good hearts. I want people who can help with their kindness, with their energy, with their thoughts. And then today she is able to give about 1,000 or 2,000 students the best possible education in with the best possible facilities. After that, government has recognized, and then now a lot of people are coming forward to help her. So, did she have money? No. So you have n number of examples. I'm just telling the example which I recently came across because we called her for our principal's conference. It was just amazing. A very simple lady. Doesn't believe in extravagance, doesn't believe in pompous life, doesn't believe in anything. So don't worry about that. So follow your heart. If not today, tomorrow you will have to follow your heart. Otherwise, by the time you retire, then you will be regretting for all the decisions that you have made in your life. So don't live a life full of regrets. Certainly not. I didn't want to do that. I still have service left. I have about 7 years of service. But when I took that decision, I was just 44. So I took that decision. So I'm not saying that you have to leave everything. You should not earn money. Then you should not. You should forego your salary and then leave your car and go. No, you don't have to do that. Still, you can. While doing all these things, you can do much more. Sacrifice your Saturdays and Sundays. Sacrifice your mobile phone time. Sacrifice all those things. I think a lot of things you can do. Yeah.
So we have another question. His sister is asking, if my heart wants to have a career in, it's the same actually, but another question is basically, if we are struggling, like if you are generally a person who is struggling with fear in an area of life, how do I gain back the confidence when I face a disheartening situation or a failure?
I will go back to my first answer, Pradeep. So the first thing what I said was look at the people around. I think we are not know-all people. So we should not expect that we know everything, and then we should not. We should go to people in our, in the immediate vicinity, people who are doing similar things, people who have followed their passion. I come back to my school, come back to our schools, or go to great schools like you have in Mysore. You have some great schools. We go to great places. We go to places where some selfless activity without any strings attached is happening. Go to them, then spend some time. Then you understand. Talk to them. How are they finding satisfaction, happiness in their lives, and then how are they, leading their lives despite so many constraints, and then still being very happy. So I think that gives you a lot of validation of your ideas. That gives you a lot of courage. That gives you proof of concept, and then that makes you very, it removes that fear factor, then factor that uncertainty in your mind. And I think after that, you come back and then slowly start doing it. And then whenever you get doubt, whenever you get stuck, go there and talk to them, and then come back. And then this is a long, not a long journey, very long journey, not a very long journey. You should not make it as a very long journey. That once you realize that it is a working, then go to fifth gear straight. Don't go to second gear, third gear, fourth gear. No, go to the top gear. So absolutely no problem. You will survive. I can give you a guarantee. Otherwise, you can come back to me. I'll show you. But look at the people who are working in your vicinity. That will really help you. That's what I did. I was inspired by a few IAS and IPS officers. Like when I was training, one IPS officer by name Amod Kant. So he came from Delhi. He retired as a Goa police DGP of Goa. So he came to me and then he said, instead of going to some retired positions where all retired bureaucrats will go, just to continue their comforts like car, a bungalow, and then to orderlies. He said, no, I didn't want to do all those things. And I said, I want to start an organization called Prayas. So he started an organization in Delhi for all street children. The name of the organization is Prayas. I was so inspired by his selflessness and then service. So I didn't have to go back to Amod Kant when I wanted to join this. So I had that Amod Kant's image in my mind. So that's a proof of concept. So why not? And Amod Kant could do it. Why not? So what is that he has and what is that I do not have? That's enough. So I hope I have answered your question. So don't think too much about that. So even if you make mistakes, nothing is going to. You'll learn from that. I made mistakes. I have learned from them. Even today I make mistakes, but I still learn. Yeah,
the great two keywords, sir, the self-analysis and the self-rewarding part of it. Thank you, sir. We have another question wherein this brother is saying, we do selfless service and without any expectations, and we go and render whatever is our passion is, but still in return we get negativity, people talking negative about us and the service and other things. So how should we continue, and how should we tackle such situations?
See, it hurts. It really hurts. We are all human beings. No, I'm not saying that go despite that. I'm not saying that. It hurts. because you go with a clear intention. Like, in COVID-19 times, we send a lot of our, because 50% of our students do not have mobile phones, and government of India and all state governments are saying that go for online, online, online. How is it possible in India when 50% of the students have no access to smartphones? When the girls, when parents are not willing to share their mobile phones, particularly with the girls, there is a gender divide here. So, and then still you want online. So what we said was, our teachers, instead of doing online, so do online, but in addition to that, go to villages and then talk to the students, make them groups and then start village learning circles. So a group of eight women, female teachers, they go to a village, and then you know what villagers, including parents, do? They chase them away. So with sticks, and women and the teachers, they went with a good heart. So they were crying, sir, we went to teach our children something, and the villagers chase us away because they thought that we are the carriers of coronavirus. So I had a very tough time in convincing them, because this is how the world is. So it hurts, because the people oftentimes they don't understand. Sometimes they misread our intentions, and sometimes some unruly elements and some selfish elements, they think that you are undermining their authority in the communities. So, or you are entering into their turf or their fiefdom. So these things do happen. But what is more important? Your desire, your goal, your purpose, finding your purpose, is that more important, or uh, these smaller inconveniences are important? Like, I told you my own story. When I entered first day, people, the teachers themselves, they said that we don't want this guy. He will desecrate our classrooms. What can be more hurting than the statement that you are not wanted here, wherein you leave everything and then go there? But my desire was not that. My desire was to make the change. My desire was to. I was willing to take any painful thing to achieve my goal, because I believe that the goal that I believe is very important for this country, not only for my own conscience, but even the collective conscience of this country called India. Yes. So this will be there. So don't worry about that. Even if in the process, even if we get lynched, even if we get attacked, doesn't matter. You will leave a very strong legacy. You will leave this world with a purpose by leaving a strong legacy. Don't worry about it. These things happen.
Thanks a lot, sir. A brother named Akshit says, please offer my humble pranams at your mother on his behalf. And he says, you're an awesome soul and role model. And other person have a quick question for you, sir. He says, is it always necessary to prove yourself correct, or you argue or establish the truth? And there's a complementary question. It's the same. Wherein this boy Siddharth brother is asking, have you ever faced such challenge with your higher authorities where you were correct and you got denied, and you have tried handling situation or correcting or establishing a truth? It's the same question, sir.
Yeah, there were in all departments, in government organizations, in all private organizations also, these things will happen. So, but you must have a common ground. We cannot be judgmental in such situations, because everybody comes with his or her own perspective. The people who work below you and who work above you, you have to understand their perspective and then find a common ground, because we are living in an organic system. We are working in an organic organization. So we need to understand their perspective and then find a common ground and then reason it out to them. Then why do you want to do what you want? So, and then you must also understand why are they insisting on you to do something, although it is against rules. And then in such case, how do we reason it out to them by telling that, look, this is possible and this is not possible, and there is another way of doing it. We have to be very creative on that aspect. So that's where creativity kicks in. If you're not creative, if you're not accommodative, without hitting our moral conscience, without compromising on our principles, it requires a lot of hard work. So it cannot be a plus b whole square equals a square plus b square plus 2ab. It's not that algebraic equation. No, we are dealing with human beings, and requires a lot of creativity, a lot of energy, a lot of out of box thinking, and a lot of persuasion. You need to have tons and tons of patience in this, because you think your goal is very important. Yeah, we come across a lot of such situations. So, but we need to be patient. We are dealing with human beings from varied backgrounds. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. We have another question. It's similar that if we have calling and passion, but we have family responsibilities and financial responsibilities, how should we pursue our passion when we have responsibilities, in a worldly affair or a family affair? How you have done it, sir?
Involve your family in that passion. So simple, very simple. So I never said that we should leave family and then go like Lord Gautam Buddha or someone. So involve your family and then take them along, and then your passion can be their passion too, or you can have a common ground in that competing ideologies or competing experiences. Yeah. So uh, I never said that you should leave your family or you should leave your job and then follow your passion. No, there is a common ground is possible. They can go hand in hand. So you will realize over a period of time which is giving you more satisfaction. Then you will, not only you, when I say you, including your spouses, including your children, they will understand. So they will evolve over a period of time, or you will evolve over a period of time. So don't worry about that. So I never said that you should leave everything and then go. There's a lot of time for that. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. We have a quick question. Are those 10 commandments help you to effectively assess the goal? And what are the other things which actually effectively helping you to assess the goal? And what are the strategies which we can use to penetrate or achieve our vision or to live our vision, sir?
10 commandments, they always remind me of my potential. So if I squander time, then I go back to 10 commandments. If I am scared of something, I go back to 10 commandments. And this is kind of, they help me to address a deeper fears in me, which are normal for any human beings. I'm not saying that I'm a superhuman being, but that will help you, that you have that in you. So, and then you are not the one whom the world think you to be. No. So they will help you. 10 commandments will always help you, and then we go back, and then not only me but almost 2 lakh children, they might be reciting currently, but slowly, like we recite the pledge in the prayers, and then we recite Janagana Mana, the national anthem, without understanding most of the meaning of it. So 10 commandments, the children recite. We encourage them to recite, but so that they remember. But when you realize that you are in the need of something, so we go back to 10 commandments, and then we try to find the answers. And then if you don't get the answer, you talk to the people like you and me, and then probably you talk to the people who are in the immediate vicinity who are facing the same problem. So we consider 10 commandments are extremely important, and you can write your own commandments. I am not asking you to write your own, follow these commandments, but something has to be there. Yeah, like you need to set some rules for yourself in the life, maybe for you and the collective commandments. It's very important, and then you should be proving them on. The more you prove them, the more powerful they become. When I say the more potent they become. So that's very important. I didn't understand the second part of your question. The first part I have answered. So the second part.
I think the second part is about now that we know what are the 10 commandments, how do we, what strategies do we use to implement them in our life? Also, sir, can you list out the 10 commandments once? We would want to make a note of it, and we would want to implement it in our life.
They are available. You write Sphero's 10 commandments. They are available in the Google images. But otherwise, I'll again just for your sake, I'll repeat them. One is, I am not inferior to anyone. Second is, I shall be the leader wherever I am. Third is, I shall do what I love and be different. Fourth is, I shall always think big and aim high. Fifth is, I shall be honest, hardworking, and punctual. Sixth is, I shall never blame others for my failures. Seventh is, I shall repay what I borrow. Eighth is, I shall neither beg nor cheat. Ninth is, I shall never fear the unknown. And the 10th one is, I shall never give up. I shall never give up. These are the 10 commandments, which are the guiding principles of all the Sweros in our networks. We have about 2 lakh children in our network. 2 lakh, more than 2 lakh, yeah. So how do we strategize? How do we create the strategies? Yeah, we need to face the situations. See, unless you face the situations, then how do we we need to solve the problems, we need to face the situations, and then that's where your grit comes into picture. That's where these 10 commandments are deployed, and then they are tried, and then if they work, that's fine. If they are working, if they are not working, then we should come back, and then we should see why they are not working. So before I solve a problem, before I become judgmental on politicians, because you guys are interfering in my day-to-day functioning, if I go back to my sixth commandment, did I do my hard groundwork before I solve this problem? So I'll come back. Without blaming my political boss, I'll come back to myself, and then I'll see whether I have done anything. Is there any efficiency in my strategy? So that's how I keep deploying them in various situations. For example, yesterday we had, for the last 3 days, we had annual alumni virtual reunion. We had about 600 alumni. So earlier, the poorest of the poor children, all marginalized children, they used to be shown only teachers. I'm not saying teacher is a bad profession, but teacher or nurse or healthcare profession or some small professions which can give them limited, support. So this time, for a change, we brought all IAS officers, IPS officers, and then the high-end achievers, despite being from poorest of the poor families, and then they went to the pinnacle of their career. So we called all of them, and then we made these children to talk to them. We made them to talk to these children, and they clarified their doubts. And then we are putting a great role model. We made some scientists in Korea, scientists in the US talk to these children. So what are we doing here? So we are telling the children that you should always think big and aim high. And then there are people from your own ecosystem who have gone to that great places. So why don't you follow their path? It is possible. So I think this is how you deploy the 10 commandments. Yeah. I hope you have answered your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much. There's another question by Sainath brother who's asking, did you receive any directions and guidance from Bhagwan Sathya Sai Baba, especially during your tenure in Anantapur?
No. Unfortunately, no. Thank you very much for asking this question, but no. But I got a lot of guidance from Sri Hejje Dara, who is an ardent devotee of Bhagwan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. Thank you very much for asking.
Sure, sir. Just another question that I had. So, you had sir. Yeah. So you had to face your opponents.
Yes.
You had to go into the lowest area. You had to sit with the families of the people who are oppressed and who have, at that point of time, threatened police lives. So what courage did you have? I mean, how do we do that? I mean, even in today's lives, in our areas that we are in, professional as well as personal, we are threatened. We are facing aggressive scenarios. So how did you put your differences aside and go and have a discussion with them?
Because I wanted to do something different. I wanted to look at the problem from a different perspective. I have a huge appetite for risk orientation. So I wanted to do something different. I was not happy with the status quoist approach. That's why I wanted to go for out of box approach. That's the reason why, although other people are adversaries, I thought we should give rest to our arms for a while and then go to other side and then negotiate with them. And then fortunately, our effort has paid off. See, fortune always favors brave. So this is a old adage, and it is true also. I was very young. I was unmindful of all the dangers. That was a gamble, and then I wanted to take a different path, and then I was lucky. I'm not saying that I'm destined to become like this. I was lucky, so I thank all the people who cooperated in this. But we need to take a gamble, otherwise, we need to take risks and then gambles when we are doing it for a right purpose. So there's nothing wrong and then nothing to fear about it. That's okay.
Perfect,
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks for those inspiring and motivating words. And it's actually there are so much of insight within those inspirations for all of us. And many of us are showing their gratitude, thanks to you, to your mother. Now, would like to invite our convener of SNLP program, Gopi sir, to come and thanks and give his
Yeah.
words to all of
Thank
us.
you very
Thank you,
much.
sir.
Please keep inspiring. Please keep inspiring. Never give up. So whenever you come across any great thing, so please do share with me. So I will also follow that. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Praveen Garu. I think, uh, I think it's divine blessings that you have come on this platform today to actually share your story. I know every member in this group are really inspired, and your talk today is very similar when your mother has asked you to think about the next step in your life, and this is something very similar when Bhagwan's mother also said, what is it that you want to do, and that is how the entire mission of Satyasai actually came up. I think thank you very much. You have been, in fact, uh, inspired our participants very clearly to dream big, meet challenges in life, and realize their dreams. It's really the right session that we had for a national leadership program for self transformation. This is purely a self transformation course that we are doing, and I think the story of Dr. R.S. Praveen Kumar, from an IPS officer, a stern-looking officer with an enchanting smile, to a heart full of love, spreading love to 2 lakh children across the state of Telangana is something very inspiring. Thank you for coming on board, Dr. Garu. I will come and meet you personally also. There are a lot of things that, the Satsai organization can also partner in this movement that you have taken up in a very big way in the social welfare department. I pronounce to your mother for actually inspiring you to do what you're doing right now. Thanks to your own conscience, we thank the conscience of yours. In fact, it stirred up a lot of our conscience right now to think big, think out of the box, and move forward. I'm sure many youngsters in this forum will start thinking on that mode right now to achieve their dreams. Keeping aside the financial commitments and everything at par, and then listen to their heart and play with their mind to move forward. Thank you once again. May Swami bless you abundantly. May God bless you. We wish you a very good night, and thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, everybody. So I wish you all the very best, and please keep inspiring us. Jai Hind and Sadhu. Thank you.
Sai Ram, sir. Sai Ram. Pramod, push. We're ending
Saram,
with
Bhaiya.
Shanti. Yeah.
Yes, Bhaiya. We'll ending. I just want to convey one more thought, Bhaiya. A few of the participants, they are thanking you a lot, Bhaiya, for this session. And one person says, Bhaiya, I'm in tears now. Thanks for the wonderful session, Bhaiya. And sir, we'll end up the session with Om Shanti Shanti. Thanks for the wonderful session.
Sai Ram.
शांति शांति शांति। जय बोलो भगवान श्री सत्य साईं बाबा जी की जय। साईं राम।
Thank you, Sai Ram, everybody.
Jai.
Good night.